want to extend a very warm welcome to our William Booth Society members who are the significant donors to the Salvation Army's Northwest Division and really an essential force behind what the Army does day in and day out to bring a message and purpose of hope and safety to those uh, uh, less endowed in our society. Just kind of a quick rundown because we have guests on as well. The William Booth Society is the people who year in and year out provide substantial financial support to the Salvation Army. And it is a significant chunk of what the Army relies upon year in and year out. So thank you again for all of you who participate at that level and help us make this Army work the way that it can. It's a privilege to have Captain Jonathan here today to talk with us about some of the things that have been going on with the Salvation Army through these curious times. Captain, we were talking the other day that there's an old adage, which is reportedly or reputedly a translation of a Chinese blessing that is actually an ironic curse. And it goes, "May you live in interesting times." Well, we certainly live in interesting times right now with staggering increases in homelessness and economic chaos due to the COVID pandemic, general awakening to areas of social injustice ingrained in our society, civil unrest, election controversy. 2020 has been a doozy. And any combination of these things could be expected to leave a regular social services organization staggering and reeling like a boxer about to hit the mat. But the Salvation Army isn't a typical social services organization. These trials have actually provided our Army an opportunity to double and triple and quadruple down on our mission of serving all without discrimination. And Captain Jonathan, I just want to take some time here this afternoon to speak with you about what's happening, about the silver lining that all of this chaos has presented to the Salvation Army to go out there and do some really fantastic work for folks that are in need on our streets and in our communities, turning chaos and fear into safety and hope. So, Captain Jonathan, let's start off with kind of a boots on the ground view of what's going on out there. What are our people seeing as they're out there working in our communities during these trying times?
Well, I think I mentioned before. There's a song from the '80s that says, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going," and I think that would describe the Salvation Army very well over these last few months. As soon as the COVID crisis became a reality for Washington, when we saw the first death in our region, the Salvation Army immediately pulled together a team to say, how is this going to impact us? What do we need to do? And what we have seen is what we anticipated on that very first day. Need has risen significantly. The number of people that are seeking the Salvation Army's help with the very basic necessities, such as food and shelter, which really have become, we've been reminded of very much the core values of what we do, core competences of what we do. People are coming to us in droves, looking for help, seeking guidance, seeking hope, and seeking those very practical needs to be met. So we're seeing significant increases in food assistance. We're seeing significant increases in need for shelter, and we've risen to those challenges because, again, when the going gets tough, the Salvation Army gets going.
That's good news, Captain. One of the things that we talk about in the social service arena is how much is actually being done on the streets versus how much is coming out of the mouths of the people who are talking about doing things. And let's talk a little bit about this predominant issue, really, particularly in the Northwest these days, that's facing our society, our way of life, and that is this extraordinary increase in homelessness. Talk to us a little bit about how the Salvation Army is walking the walk when it comes to tackling homelessness in our community.
Well, over these last 8 months, all of our sheltering has moved from, some of what we did, a good chunk of what we did actually was 24/7 sheltering in a number of our programs. But we also did a significant amount of overnight sheltering, and that sheltering was in very close quarters. Obviously, with the COVID crisis, we can't have people sleeping as closely as maybe they used to. And so we had to create a lot more space between beds. We also recognized that we needed to get people off of the streets and get them into a solution, at least an immediate solution, so that they had 24-hour support. And so we worked with our city and county partners, and we have a hotel that we've been operating, and we have a number of additional facilities that we have been operating, and moved them to a 24/7 environment. Most recently, we just opened, just literally a week or so ago, the new Soto Shelter. This is a shelter that will provide a place for 282 individuals. And what we're providing within that shelter is, again, something that's become very evident to us through this process. Wraparound services are critical. We're seeing that when someone's very basic needs of shelter are provided, and food and those types of things, they're able to begin to relax for a moment so they can begin to think about what might be next for them. And again, if we put that in context, if an individual doesn't have to worry about where they're going to sleep physically tonight, they're not worried about whether their items might get stolen during the night. They're not worried about whether they might get beaten up tonight, and they're not worried about where their next meal might come from. Then they are able to begin to think about what might be next for them. So our Soto Shelter, along with all of our facilities, are offering wraparound services of case management and housing navigation. And we're added also in our new shelter the component of mental health services, because that is also a challenge. Obviously, we also offer rehabilitation for those that want that support. And what we're finding then is that we're able to move people much quicker into a permanent solution to their need.
Captain Harvey, let's talk a little bit about 24-hour shelters versus just overnight shelters. What's going on with the Army's effort in that arena?
Well, again, we've really stepped up to the plate significantly in ensuring that every one of our shelters is now 24/7, and that is the case. We are not operating any overnight shelters at this point. All of our shelters are transitioning to that 24/7 model. And as I said, with the elements of the wraparound services that are provided in that, we are able to move people into permanent solutions much faster, and we're finding that people are there. It sounds so trivial, but they're sort of the behavioral elements are not the issues that we generally have in an overnight shelter, because some of those stressors are being taken away from them. So we're moving very significantly towards 24/7 sheltering, and a long-term goal is to really continue to expand that ability, but also expand into a permanent supportive housing, which is really the next step after enhanced shelter.
Now, it's interesting, and a lot of our supporters, especially our William Booth Society members, are going to know this just secondhand because they're so involved in what's going on. But the Army can actually take a person from the shelter into permanent housing for an average of about $5,000. Captain Harvey, how is this change in the way that we're dealing with the shelters going to impact our ability to help get people into a permanent situation where they are safe, warm, and secure?
I think it's going to speed up the process, and I think that it's going to ensure that there are more people that have that opportunity. Obviously, again, 280 beds in the new Soto Shelter. We're hoping that it's not the same people there for the next 6 months. That would certainly not be the objective, although our intent is not to just move somebody along just because they've been there 10 days or something. Our objective will be to come alongside every individual in that facility and walk a path with them, help move them towards that permanent solution. So we think it's going to happen faster, and I think we're already proving that. And I think we're going to see a significant increase in the amount of people that move to that permanently housed environment. And I got to tell you, Ted, there's nothing like seeing someone put a key in the front door for the first time. I recently received a photograph from our Seattle Social Services team. They shared this excitement of one of their clients that they were able to actually go with to their new home. And they took a picture of this individual putting the key into the door. Now, you and I, and maybe the individuals that are part of listening to this today might think, a key in the door. Okay. To individuals that have been living rough under a bridge or in a tent or in a vehicle, whatever it might be, putting that key in the front door and unlocking the door to a new future, it's tremendous. It's life transforming for them and incredibly rewarding from my perspective to have that privilege of being part of that. And I would say to our friends, part of the William Booth Society who are with us today, you helped make that happen. That really is the simple fact. You were part of making sure an individual was able to put a key in a lock and unlock a new future for themselves. It's a tremendous thing.
It is hard to imagine something that could be more conducive to rebuilding a person's dignity and hope for the future than giving them a place that is their own to be safe and secure. That's a terrific story. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between our shelter work and our work in outreach to people who aren't yet to the shelters.
Well, we have sorry, I apologize, I butted in on you.
Necessarily living under a bridge yet, but somebody who's recently lost a job and therefore was unable to make a mortgage payment or was unable to make their rent payment. And so they're now in their car or in a van. How does that change the equation with regard to how the Army is approaching folks?
Well, we have an incredible new program. In fact, Joanne and Bob Hacker, who are part of the William Booth Society, were part of helping make this possible. We initiated about a year and a half ago a new program called Street Level. Street Level began as purely an outreach where we had individuals that would go out on the streets and they would provide a cup of coffee, some personal hygiene products, pair of socks, those types of things, and begin to build relationships with people. What we found was very quickly that the individuals that we were connecting with, they needed someone to pay attention to them. They needed someone to really genuinely care about them and enter into a relationship with them. And when that began to happen, then they are much more willing to receive support and help and guidance. There's a trust that begins to build. And again, just to put that in context, if you walk down the streets of Seattle, many would probably turn their heads away from a homeless individual because it's hard to look. And many people don't necessarily want to make that eye contact. What our team found is that it's critical to make eye contact. In fact, just hugging someone, now obviously we're not allowed to do that with social distancing right now, but that simple act of a hug they found was incredibly important. That birthed the Street Level program. We now have, thanks to the hackers, we now have this incredible mobile vehicle that is a mobile office. It is a converted transit van that has on the back end of it, it opens up and inside is a mobile office. Photocopier, printer, phone system, the computer, the entire thing. We're able to do case management on the streets and actually skip the shelter and move people directly from the car that they're living in, the tent that they're living in, whatever that might be, and get them through a case management process where we used to lose them on the way to the office, get them through a case management process and move them into a permanent solution. It's an incredibly efficient program, saves a ton of money in sheltering, and it's much more successful. Over 300 individuals in this year and a half have been moved from a partial, moved to a homeless environment, a situation where they're living without a home and are now living in a permanently housed solution. And our caseworkers, our team, is continuing to follow up with those individuals and making sure that they're staying there. And it's interesting. One of the things that we talked about was, is that like a 15-day, 30-day, 60-day process? How does that work? It's an ongoing process because of the relationship that gets built. There's a connection that gets built. So there's a natural checking in with people that happens.
So how does it impact the folks that get this service, Captain Jonathan, to have somebody from the Army there following up at 3 months, at 6 months, at a year out? How does it help them stay on the rails and get themselves back to a point of really being participants in society?
Ted, I think it's absolutely critical having somebody walk that path with you. I heard about a story recently of an individual who we were having a challenge keeping housed, and what was determined through a process was that the thing that was holding them back from staying in this home was as simple as a ceiling fan. Now, again, you and I might not be able to comprehend. I'll be honest with you, I can't comprehend them. I can't wrap my head around that. But for this individual, the trauma that they experienced in their life was significantly connected to a ceiling fan. And as a result, the ceiling fan in the home was holding them back from staying in the home. We resolve that problem and get them to a stable situation where they're now staying housed. So having that person that's walking alongside them, that's checking in with them, that's communicating with them on a regular basis, absolutely critical.
So I'm interested, Captain Jonathan, you were talking about how much more efficient we can be with the street level team taking people directly into housing instead of into a shelter first. What are we talking about here in dollars on a per person basis?
So it costs about, on average, about $5,000 to move someone from a sheltered environment from the streets through a shelter and then into a permanently housed solution. With the street level, that gets reduced down to about $2,000 a person. So there's a significant cost saving in going directly from the street to a permanent solution.
That's really astounding if you think about it. A $10,000 donation can put 5 people out of their cars and into permanent housing and restore a segment of society, even if it's a sliver, a significant part of society that needs help now. That's really hard to believe that that little bit of money can do all that.
It is, and I think in the business world, we obviously look at scalability of your business, right? So how can we scale this business? In the nonprofit world, we look at then, okay, so how do we scale this program? And if we have a couple of people in a vehicle, we know what the cost of operating that looks like. If we were to scale that and now have 10 of those vehicles driving around King County, and again, not just driving, but actually connecting with people, we could move 3,000 people over an 18 months to 2 year period into a permanently housed solution. Put that in perspective of how many people are on the streets of Seattle today, which I think is somewhere in the region of 11,000 or so. I think the last numbers I saw. That's a significant dent, And again, I would say, Ted, that it's not just about, isn't it great to move 5 people into a permanently housed solution? We're literally transforming that person's world. So that's 5 people who are not just moving into a permanent solution, which in and of itself is critical, but we're giving them a whole new lease of life. We're giving them a new opportunity in a world that is something that many of them just couldn't have comprehended maybe 6 months or a year ago.
You know, it's important to note, I think, Captain Jonathan, that of course there are people that the Salvation Army cannot help, cannot get to. But what excitement it must be for the Army, for the folks that dedicate their everyday efforts to what we're trying to do as the Army, to be able to have such an incredible impact on such a scale, and to see that opportunity to have it scale up in the future and really make a giant dent in things like you're talking about. Tell me about the attitude of our folks and what kind of enthusiasm and excitement they must be having.
Oh, it's tremendous for the clients, for the individuals that we get to serve, and to see the joy. I heard about one gentleman that was a regular with our street level program, and he actually was helping us, and he was homeless himself and was working towards that permanent solution for him. But he was actually outreaching himself to others and saying, hey, you got to connect with Salvation Army. They really care and they really help people. So there's an enthusiasm and excitement amongst the people that we serve. And then to see the dedication and commitment of our team is just a tremendous thing. I just continue to be astounded by the commitment level of the staff that work on our front lines every day. And many of them are individuals who have gone through homelessness or addiction themselves and are now working in the environment of our shelters. Many of our individuals in the Soto Shelter our staff within the Soto Shelter have formerly been either living a life of addiction or homeless themselves. They understand, they get what it's like, they understand the struggles. They were able to move through that with the help of the Salvation Army, and now they're coming back because they want to help someone else. It's unbelievable thing to watch.
So you used an interesting term just a few minutes ago, Captain Harvey, about scalability. And it sounds like the Salvation Army has been able to really leverage its expertise and its experience in these trying times to open up all sorts of new opportunities to reach out and help people in need. Let's talk a little bit about how these changes that we're experiencing can increase, can be scalable to allow us to bring more help, more goods, more attention to the people who desperately need it.
Sure. Well, again, COVID has really, it caused us to almost go back to the drawing board on everything. I think the core competencies, as I mentioned earlier on, this food and shelter, and obviously we do a lot more programs in food and shelter. But even in those elements, it's not that we didn't stop doing them. I mean, from day one, our commitment was we're in this for the long haul. We are standing firm on the front lines where many were having to close their doors, where many people were saying it's just too dangerous for us to do this. The Salvation Army stepped forward and said, what more can we do? And as a result, we've been able to scale up. We're seeing increases in sheltering in places like Spokane, in Everett, in Longview. We just reopened the Hope House Hotel there. In Helena, we've just opened a new social services center. That was an addition to a building, so they now have a new dedicated space for social services. As I said, in Spokane, we've ramped up significantly in the amount of sheltering. We're about to make that a much more permanent solution in Spokane. And we have new locations, social services in Bellingham. We just added a new facility there. We actually repurposed a thrift store into a food bank because the need is just skyrocketing in that community. We also added something that became very evident early on, was there are companies that wanted to support us with in-kind product, but none of our locations had the size to be able to take donations in large scale. So we temporarily rented a warehouse because we were seeing this opportunity ahead of us. And before we knew it, we had a warehouse that was jammed with stuff, and we couldn't move it out fast enough to individuals. We got into a system and now are actually in a permanent environment now, permanent warehouse facility. And on a regular basis, the product is coming in one side of the building and literally exiting out the other and supporting all of our centers across the Northwest. In fact, our team just literally yesterday took 2 truckloads across to the other side of the Northwest Division to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They based themselves there, and then we're able to support our centers in Montana and on the eastern side of Washington. Again, that element of scalability, the Salvation Army, and I apologize, I keep coming into the camera because I get passionate about this, and I'm sorry about that. But we were made for this. We were created for this. And so as a result, when the realities of COVID hit, and again, with that mindset of, okay, we're not backing down here, we're going to keep charging forward, it's opened up a world of new opportunities for us. And we've embraced those opportunities because what it ultimately means is the people who need us most are the true winners.
The Salvation Army has a well-deserved reputation for humility, Captain. And so let me just point out to our listeners today, it's maybe a time for a little bit of bragging. It is interesting that in our work with our governmental partners in the sheltering area, that hands down, notwithstanding all of the challenges of the last several months and the COVID pandemic, everything that we've been through, the Salvation Army's protocols and procedures for shelter work have become recognized by our government partners as the absolute gold standard for sheltering folks under these circumstances. Just congratulations to you, Captain. And why don't you just wrap up our session here by kind of describing how the Army has approached this. What is it that drives this organization to succeed under these trying times?
I think the bottom line is, Ted, we have a passion to see people's lives transformed. Our mission says to take care of people in mind, in body, and in soul, and we embrace that. So we're motivated. We're motivated by the love of God to share hope with people, and that means doing it in a very practical term. Whether that's a box of food, and again, we've produced thousands of them over this last few months. Whether it's providing a shelter, no matter what the program might be. The Salvation Army is committed because that's who we are. It's what we do. It's at our very core. Our very mission is to serve others. That's who we are. And so that's what motivates us on a day-to-day basis. And again, I've got to commend our staff and our volunteers, and then a huge thank you to our donors. We simply can't do what we do. We just get to be the vehicle, right? That's the reality here. We get to be, as an organization, the vehicle that delivers a service. The people that do the work and the people that support the work are really the real heroes as far as I'm concerned, because we can't do this without dedicated people who support us and dedicated people who work alongside us.
Well, we're all in need of a little hope, and you provided us a lot of it today with your tales of how the Salvation Army is out there affecting the community that we all love and live in. So thank you very much, Captain Jonathan. Respectful of folks' time, we wanted to give people an opportunity to raise any questions they may have for the captain. And I believe that it is open to the audience now if folks would like to raise a question. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit more about the street level team, Captain. This van that the hackers were so generous in helping us set up, what are we talking about? What's the cost of getting another one of those vehicles out there?
The actual cost of the vehicle is right around $75,000. That purchases the vehicle and then does the upfit. And the upfit includes the technology to be able to have connectivity, both with computer and phones. It provides, it has storage elements on it to take product out to people. It also has a seat and a space to carry people. So if we do need to move them to a shelter, or if we take them to their permanent solution, we're able to help with that. And then the cost of the program works out over a couple of year period. It's about $250,000 investment in total. And that's what really gets one of those vehicles on the street, gets two people working within that vehicle, provides us with that seed money to be able to help folks move into that permanent solution, maybe first month, last month rent, those types of things. And I think something that I didn't mention earlier is the element of prevention. And I think that you may have led me to that and I missed it in my excitement. One of the other elements of what we're so actively involved in right now, again, across the Northwest, in every corner of the Northwest, quite frankly, every single community, is making sure that we keep people in homes as much as possible with rent assistance, utility assistance, food, those types of things. Because the more people we can keep in their homes, again, that is a much more financially viable situation than trying to shelter someone or then ultimately move them into a permanent solution.
Excellent point. So we have a couple of questions here. First, Captain, what protocols will keep volunteers safe at the Toy and Joy besides the change to a drive-through?
That's a great question. We've been working incredibly hard. Even over the weekend, we listened to the governor's statements on Friday. That gave us a hint because he's been very good at sort of hinting at stuff and then actually doing it over his press conferences. So that gave us a heads up of some of the things that might be coming. They came a little bit earlier than we anticipated on Sunday. But we've had a very strict protocol from day one of how we do things, which is why we ended up with what was considered that gold standard of sheltering. We will obviously be making sure that everybody is wearing PPE. They'll be provided with gloves. They'll be provided with masks. But we will also be making sure that social distancing is absolutely imperative. So the space that we will be using, it will be set up very differently. We won't be doing Toy and Joy as I think was kind of hinted to. We won't be doing Toy and Joy like we normally do, where people come and actually shop. We will actually have volunteers, again, spread out over a longer period of time, less people in an environment at the same time, much more spread out. Those items will be bagged, they will sit for a couple of days, and then we will distribute through the drive-through. And again, protocols of PPE and such will be absolutely paramount. We'll do everything we can to ensure the safety of people, but that also requires that our volunteers take that seriously, making sure their masks remain on and those types of things.
Here we have another question, Captain. What are some of the examples of the corporate donated items that are sent into the warehouse?
Oh, tremendous! Actually, it actually ranges significantly. So we've created a really great partnership with an entity, a third-party entity that manages returns for companies. So that's meant everything from furniture items that maybe were returned, boxes that were maybe a little bit damaged and so they couldn't be delivered, or it was delivered to the wrong address. Those items are going into our retail stores and are able to support our retail program, which in turn provides work opportunities, work retraining, and rehabilitation for multiple individuals within our community. It is also things like bottles of bleach, food products, snack items, drinks, diapers, toilet bowl cleaning. You go down the list. It really is quite tremendous, the amount of products, even coffee. I was referring to the shelter we just opened in Spokane. They literally go through a pallet of coffee a month, if you can believe that, a pallet of coffee a month. We're able to provide that at no cost to them as a result of that partnership that we've built, and again, with another company that is donating those coffee products. And so it's helping us to be, again, much more efficient in serving our people in a really great way. So that kind of gives you an overview of the type of products we're receiving.
Well, if anything's going to speak to a Northwesterner, it's got to be a cup of coffee. So happy to
and
hear
it's Starbucks too, which is amazing.
So we've got another question here. Speaking of the Soto Shelter, which is really an exciting opportunity for us here in the greater Puget Sound area, but how's the move into the new Soto Shelter going?
It's going very well. We determined that it was important for our guests, the individuals that we take care of, to do that in a slow process. And so as we're sort of emptying out some of those multiple facilities that we had around town, we're bringing them over in waves. So we'll bring in a certain amount each day, let them get settled, let them get comfortable in the environment, and then add to that new individuals that will come behind them. So the move is going very, very well, very smooth. We have had absolutely zero problems with that. And our goal is that by the end of this year, literally within the next month and a half, we will have all of those outside locations all under one roof. And I think it's going to be a much better environment for the people that we're serving.
Excellent. All right, last question, Captain. We're going to let you off the hot seat here in just a minute. But do you anticipate any new shelters opening in King County in the near future?
Not quite sure what's on the horizon. We have a few feelers out for some new opportunities that are presenting themselves, and it would be too early to share any of that at this point. But there are some potential opportunities on the horizon. Again, remembering that as we scale up these programs, we obviously have to have trained staff that are qualified to do what they need to do, that understand their responsibilities well, so we can take care of people well. And so we as much as we've done a lot very, very fast over this past month, we do really want to get settled into the new Soto environment before we take on something new, because we want to do it well. We really pride ourselves on, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it well. And so we really want to get our team settled. We've ramped up probably about 50 new staff, or again, in the process of hiring 50 new staff in order to man these additional hours. And so it's really important that we do that well, which requires that training period. But there may be some new opportunities on the horizon for us.
Well, Captain, we really appreciate your stories of providing that human touch that actually gives people a chance to see a future that they can participate in as a dignified member of our society. That's just fantastic. And of course, thank you for your very soothing accent. It always makes things seem so much better when I chat with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sharing part of your day with us today. This is a new chance for us to try to find ways to keep in touch with our are really important folks that are the Army behind the Army, the people that keep us open and working every day. We appreciate you so much. And we do want to encourage you to reach out to us if there are particular ideas that you might have about topics that you'd like to hear about in future Zoom presentations like this, or folks within the Salvation Army that you'd like to hear from, maybe our street level team or some folks from the new shelters. Anyway, let us know. We will continue to do our best to keep you up to speed as to what your Army is doing out there in the community day in and day out to make this a better place to live. So thank you all. Captain Harvey, thank you. And we will bid you adieu.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today.